The city moved slow when you were watching from the shadows. Philadelphia, gritty, cold, never quiet. The kind of place that didn't forget faces, especially not the ones that used to run things. Streets had stories buried in their sidewalks. Corners still remembered who bled on them. But by the early 90s, the mob had lost its voice. The old bosses were either in prison, dead, or ghosts in Florida. And that's when he came back. Joey Merlino. They called him Skinny Joey. But there was nothing small about the way he moved. He didn't walk. He slid through rooms like he already knew what everyone was going to say. Always dressed sharp, hair slicked, voice smooth, hands clean. But everyone knew he didn't get that way by being soft. He wasn't just another wannabe with a big mouth. He had blood in the game. His father, Salvatore Chucky Merlino, had been underboss to Nicky Scarfo. So Joey knew how things worked. More importantly, he knew what had broken them. Power got sloppy. Trust disappeared. The streets got quiet because everyone was scared. Not of the mob, but of the feds. Joey? He didn't scare easy. He came up during the cleanup, when the big headlines were over. When the wise guys were getting cuffed, not crowned. And he didn't care. He liked it that way. Less noise, more space. Like a boxer walking into the ring after the first round's already done and everyone's bleeding. Joey was 30, young for a boss, but already a name. And the way he stepped in, it wasn't just business. It was theater. He held court at Stakes on Broad Street, sipping wine like he was born there. Walked around South Philly like it belonged to him. To the old guys, he was reckless, too flashy, smiling too much, laughing too loud. But the younger guys, they loved him. He looked like something out of the movies. He talked fast, he played hard, he drove a convertible, he made the mob feel alive again. And behind that smile, behind the silk shirts and the charm, he was already building an empire. Not the old way, not just loans and protection in envelopes. Joey brought in drug money, sports betting, nightclubs, union hands, all of it wrapped in charisma. And where other guys hid, he showed off. He threw 4th of July parties so wild, even the cops stopped by, not to bust them, just to watch. He wasn't scared of being seen. He wanted to be seen. But the thing about bright lights, they attract snakes. And in Philly, snakes came with wiretaps and friendly smiles. Joey's crew was tight. Guys like Giorgi Borghese, Steve Mazzone, John Ciancaglini, they weren't just muscle, they were family. They ate together, bled together, did time together. But even family turns when the stakes are high enough. He was building something bold, but that made him a target. Not just for the FBI, but for the old school guys who didn't like how fast Joey was moving. Who whispered in back rooms, he's bringing too much heat, too much noise. But Joey didn't care. He was never built for silence. He once told a guy, if they're gonna lock me up, I'm gonna give them a reason. And maybe that was the first sign that deep down, he knew this story wouldn't end clean. Still, in the beginning, there was something magical about it. The streets of South Philly started to buzz again. Guys in Cadillacs parked outside corner bars, Italian flags on porches, the old ways polished with new swagger. People started calling it a resurrection. But the thing about bringing something back from the dead, sometimes it comes back wrong. There's something about South Philadelphia in the morning that doesn't show up in postcards. The sun rolls over the rooftops like it's got a hangover. The air smells like cigarettes, frying meat, and old pavement. Church bells ring, but half the neighborhood ain't listening. And somewhere, inside a corner cafe where the espresso's bitter and the conversations are hushed, Joey Merlino was already planning his next move. He sat near the window, not in the back, not hiding, just close enough so you could see him if you were looking. That was the thing about Joey. He wanted to be seen, not because he was arrogant, but because he believed in presence. In a world where rats wore wires and fear ruled everything, being visible was its own kind of power. His coffee sat untouched, black. Hot, a cigarette burned slow between his fingers. Across from him was Giorgi Borghese, his cousin, mouth like a buzzsaw, always talking fast, always moving. But now, he was quiet, because Joey was thinking. "You smell that?" Joey finally said, not looking up. Georgie raised an eyebrow. "What, the pork roll next door?" "Nah," Joey said. "It's the city. It's waking up again." Georgie leaned back. He knew what Joey meant. Philly had been dead for a while. After Scarfo's reign ended in blood and indictments, nobody wanted to be the next name on the front page. Guys either disappeared, flipped, or got cautious. Real cautious. Joey? He wasn't built like that. He didn't want to run the streets quietly. He wanted to own them, loud and proud like the old days, but with a sharper edge. His crew wasn't just street muscle. These were guys who believed in him, who saw him as the future. There was Steve Mazzone, calm and calculating, always dressed like he stepped out of a catalog. John Ciancaglini, quiet but lethal, the kind of guy who could make a body disappear without raising his voice. And then there was Mikey Chang, the wild card, loyal to the bone, but always one spark away from starting a fire. They weren't soldiers, they were family, and they were hungry. That morning, Joey laid out the plan. It wasn't about bringing back the old rackets, not just bookmaking and shylocking. That stuff was a given. What Joey wanted was influence. He wanted clubs, unions, real estate. He wanted to own the city's heartbeat, not just its wallet. But before that, they needed to send a message. Because whispers had already started, little rumors from Atlantic City to Broad Street, that Joey was too flashy, that he was reckless, that he'd get everybody locked up again. Joey didn't respond with threats. He responded with a party. It was the 4th of July. Fireworks cracked across the sky, but the real show was happening in Margate, right down the Jersey Shore. Joey had rented a house big enough for 50 people, and he didn't care who saw it. His girl wore diamonds the size of marbles. Guys showed up in convertibles, gold chains swinging, cigars already lit. Even the feds showed up, parked across the street in their nondescript cars, sweating in the heat, pretending not to stare. And Joey, he raised his glass in their direction. "Make sure they get the good side," he joked, grinning. To the younger guys, he looked like a god. To the old heads, he looked like a problem. But nobody could deny the buzz. Philly hadn't felt this alive in years, and Joey knew it. He fed off it. People who hadn't made a score in years were suddenly showing up again. Guys who were once buried in quiet jobs or retired started sniffing around. They wanted in. But Joey wasn't handing out favors. If you were going to stand next to him, you had to be willing to bleed for the name. One night, at a small sit-down near Passyunk, an old-timer from the Scarfo days leaned in too close, too comfortable. "You're stirring the pot too much, kid," he said. Joey didn't blink. If the pot's empty, someone's got to fill it. That was Joey, sharp, cocky, and dangerous, but not stupid. Behind the charm was a man who watched everything, every handshake, every whisper, every late arrival. He played the long game. He smiled in public, but made decisions in the dead of night. And his rise wasn't just about swagger, it was about structure. He reorganized the crew. No more sloppy earners, no more druggies who couldn't keep their mouths shut. If you wanted in, you had to bring value, money, connections, loyalty, preferably all three. And if you couldn't, you were out. Simple. But the streets, they don't stay quiet forever. One night, Joey met with a union rep who handled construction contracts down by the waterfront. The guy was nervous, looking over his shoulder like ghosts were chasing him. "I got people watching," the man said, voice shaking. "You know who's sniffing around? Not just the feds. Some old faces. They think you're going to bring war back." Joey leaned forward. His voice didn't rise. He didn't threaten. He just spoke like a man who had nothing left to prove. "If they want a war," he said, "they should have stayed buried." That was it. After that, the streets started shifting. Territory that had been cold was warming up again. Bookies were calling, dealers were checking in. Even guys from New York were paying attention. Joey didn't want Philly to be second tier anymore. He wanted it to stand next to the five families, not behind them. And that was the danger. Because when you shine too bright, you don't just attract followers, you attract enemies. One of them was already moving in silence. A guy Joey once trusted, small-time earner, good with numbers. Laughed at his jokes, kissed his ring, even brought him envelopes like clockwork. But behind his smile, he was already talking to the feds. They called him a confidential informant. Joey would later call him dead weight. But in the moment, no one knew, not yet. The betrayal hadn't surfaced. The clock was ticking. And Joey, for all his instincts, couldn't see the blade being sharpened behind his back. Not yet. And so Philly kept moving. Streets got busy again, backrooms buzzed, money flowed. But with every envelope, every handshake, there was a growing sense that something, someone, was coming. Because every empire makes enemies, and every Don, no matter how smart, eventually finds out that loyalty is a currency that runs out. Trust. That's the currency no one talks about. It don't show up in ledgers. It ain't folded inside envelopes. But without it, nothing works. Not this life, not this world. It's the glue that keeps men silent, even when their backs are against a wall and their mouths are full of blood. And that's what started to crack first. Not money, not territory, trust. It started with little things. The wrong guy showing up at the wrong time. Eyes that used to smile now twitching, avoiding contact. Names being said in whispers, not out loud. Joey noticed. He always noticed. He'd sit in his usual spot at Dante and Luigi's, back booth near the kitchen, letting the noise of the restaurant cover the real conversations. On the surface, it was all wine and pasta and laughter, but in Joey's mind, he was dissecting every word, every gesture, like a surgeon picking apart a tumor. "You feel it?" he asked Mazzone one night, not taking his eyes off the door. Steve nodded. He didn't have to ask what Joey meant. There was a chill in the air, not the kind that came from winter, the kind that crept in from betrayal, cold and crawling. Something was off, and they both knew it. "Somebody's talking," Joey said. "Not just out there, inside." That was the worst kind of rot. Not from the outside, not the feds or some rival crew, but from your own table, your own people. Someone breaking omerta not because they were scared, but because they thought they were smarter than the life itself. It was Vinny the Stain who said the wrong thing first. He was a small guy, barely in his 30s, ran numbers, kept his mouth shut, or so everyone thought. He didn't talk much around Joey, never looked him dead in the eye. But one night at a card game in Kensington, he got too comfortable. It was late, whiskey deep, guys playing gin. Someone cracked a joke about Joey throwing that party on the shore again. And Vinny laughed a little too hard, said, "Yeah, they're probably still sorting the tapes from that one." Tapes. No one said anything at first, just a look. One of those still, quiet looks that hangs in the air like fog. Georgie caught it. So did Mikey Chang. Later that night, Joey called Georgie. "Who's Vinny been talking to?" he asked, voice flat. "I don't know," Georgie said, "but I'll find out." That was enough, because Joey didn't need a wire to hear betrayal. He could smell it, like sour meat left too long in the summer air. And so, the circle started to tighten. It wasn't just Philly watching anymore. New York was sniffing around again. Guys from the Gambinos, the Genovese, even whispers from up north, all wondering if Joey was legit or if he was going to bring another wave of headlines and indictments. One of the old-timers from Brooklyn sent word. "Tell your boy to keep the fireworks off the street." Joey laughed when he heard that. "If they're worried about fireworks," he said, "they shouldn't be in this life." But deep down, he knew the game was shifting. This wasn't the old world anymore, where bosses held silent power and guys took the fall without blinking. Now, you had phones that listened, cars with bugs, cousins who flipped, and friends who wore wires right under their crucifixes. Even the safest rooms weren't safe. Joey stopped using phones, started meeting in diners, loud ones full of noise and old men arguing about baseball. Sometimes he'd talk while the jukebox was blasting. Sometimes he'd write a message on a napkin, show it for 2 seconds, then burn it in an ashtray. Paranoid? No, just smart, because something was coming. He could feel it, like a storm rising behind the skyline, slow and silent. The first hit didn't come with a gun, it came with a subpoena. One morning, Mazzone walked into Joey's place with a face pale as death. He dropped a manila envelope on the table. "Feds hit my brother's house," he said. Joey didn't flinch. "What they take?" Hard drives, photos, tax returns, nothing real. Joey nodded. They fishing? Yeah, Steve said, but they're casting wide. That was the thing about the FBI. They didn't kick down doors like the movies. They watched, they waited, they built cases with coffee cups and toll receipts. They listened until they could ruin your life with a single file folder. Joey knew this. His own father, Chucky, had done time. Joey grew up watching men disappear, some behind bars, some into holes in the ground. He knew that the enemy wore suits and badges, not leather jackets. But still, there was something deeper bothering him. He wasn't scared of the feds. He was scared of who was helping them, because now it was certain. Someone was talking. 1 week later, it came out. Vinny, the stain, had flipped. Not officially, not yet, but one of Joey's guys in the courthouse passed word that Vinny had been seen entering a side room with a federal agent and coming out with a new lease on life. That was all Joey needed to hear. He called Georgie, Mikey, and Mazzone. Told them to meet him behind an old butcher shop off Oregon Avenue. No phones, no heat, just old school. Eyes, ears, fists. They met in the dark, under a dying streetlight. Joey lit a cigarette and looked at each of them. "We got cancer," he said, "and we got to cut it out." No one argued, because in this life, when a guy flips, he don't just threaten the crew. He threatens history, legacy, bloodlines. One man's fear can burn down a whole empire. Georgie asked, "What's the move?" Joey looked up at the stars, the same stars his father probably looked at the night he got made. Clean, quiet, permanent. That was all. No more parties, no more press, just cleanup. Because when trust dies, there's no eulogy. There's only retribution. Vinny disappeared 3 days later. No police report, no body, no headlines, just silence. Some said he ran to witness protection. Some said he was in Mexico. Others said he was buried under a slab of concrete near the Navy Yard. Joey never confirmed it, never denied it. But the message was clear. Talk, and you vanish. And with that silence came something strange. Respect. Even the old school guys, the ones who doubted Joey, started to nod his way a little more. The streets, they respond to action, not speeches. But trust? Even after the cleanup, it didn't come back all the way. Because once a rat shows his face, everyone starts checking their closets. Joey didn't sleep much after that. Not because he was scared, but because his mind never stopped. He'd lie awake in his South Philly condo, listening to the traffic roll by, thinking about who might be next, who was solid, who wasn't. And then came the dream. He had it more than once, always the same. He's sitting at a table, candlelight, red sauce on the stove. Across from him is his father, Chucky, dressed sharp, face older than he remembers. "You think you're in control," his father says. Joey doesn't answer. "You're not," Chucky says. "You're riding a tiger. The day you stop gripping its neck, it eats you." Then he wakes up, sweating, cold, heart pounding, and outside, the city sleeps. But Joey doesn't, not anymore, because now he knows the storm has started. The first time Joey saw the white SUV parked across from his mother's row home, he didn't say a word, just looked at it. Dark windows, engine running, too clean for that neighborhood, and too still. He turned his head, lit a cigarette, and nodded to himself. "Feds," he muttered, not surprised. They weren't hiding anymore. Not like the old days when agents sat in beaters and disguised themselves like junkies. This new breed, they wanted you to know they were watching. It was psychological. Make you sweat, make you slip, make you second-guess every person around you. And for the first time in years, Joey was starting to feel that itch again, the one that crawls down the back of your neck when you know something's wrong, but you can't see where the blade is coming from. His crew felt it too. Steve Mazzone, once cool under pressure, had started looking tired. Georgie Borghese snapped faster than usual. Mikey Chang, always the live wire, was now going dead silent during meetings. The circle was tightening. Not because Joey wanted it that way, but because the heat was making everyone pull back, get quiet, start counting days instead of making plans. Joey could see it in their eyes. They weren't thinking about expansion anymore. Not new routes, not new earners. They were thinking about exit strategies, about wives, about kids, about prison time, and that was dangerous. Because when men start seeing the end, they stop being loyal. They start being smart. The meetings moved to weirder places now. No more diners, no more street corners. Joey had started calling them in moving cars, taking loops around South Philly, never staying parked for more than 10 minutes. He kept a burner phone in his sock, changed it every 3 days, one call, one topic, then crushed and dumped in a storm drain. Paranoid? Maybe, but it wasn't paranoia if they really were listening. He'd gotten confirmation that the feds had wired a pizzeria on Tasker Street, one of the old hangouts where envelopes changed hands like pizza boxes. Someone had planted a mic in the cash register. And worse, someone had been talking inside the family again. Not Vinny. This was someone new. Joey didn't know who yet, but the signs were there, the kinds of questions that only someone on the inside could answer showing up in court papers, names redacted, but Joey could read the outline. It was someone close, too close. That's when John Ciancaglini started acting strange. John had been Joey's guy for years, stone cold, dependable, the kind of man who didn't flinch even when bullets were flying. But now, he was showing up late to meetings, canceling sit-downs, taking longer to return calls. Joey didn't confront him right away. That wasn't his style. Instead, he watched. Had Mikey trail him. Nothing aggressive, just eyes from a distance. And what Mikey saw didn't make sense. John was meeting with a guy from New York, someone from the Lucchese family, in a parking lot, in a car with New Jersey plates. When Joey heard that, he didn't yell. He just leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "He's shopping for a parachute," he said. Georgie slammed his glass down. "You want me to handle it?" Joey shook his head. "Not yet. I need to know why." Because Joey didn't believe John was a rat. Not yet. But the game was changing, and men who once would have taken a bullet for you were now wondering if they could buy time with your name. Meanwhile, the feds were circling tighter. They'd started issuing subpoenas like parking tickets. Anyone who ever ate at Dante and Luigi's was getting called into federal buildings. They hit unions, construction sites, car dealerships, even Joey's dentist. One guy, a quiet earner who fixed HVACs for half the crew, got picked up and held for 36 hours without a charge. When he came out, his eyes looked hollow, like someone had scraped the soul out of him. "They're offering deals," he said. "Deals with numbers I didn't know existed." Joey didn't even look up from his plate. "They offered my old man a deal too," he said. "He took 10 years instead." That shut the table up. Because in the world they came from, taking the hit wasn't heroism, it was the bare minimum. Still, Joey knew the weight was building. It wasn't like the old mob busts where they got you on one phone call or one envelope. This new generation of feds, they were building Ryko cases, monsters with teeth. They didn't want one guy, they wanted everybody, and that meant time, surveillance, patience. It also meant they needed a keystone witness, a big name, someone high enough to make the dominoes fall. And that's what kept Joey up at night, because there were only a few people who knew enough to ruin everything. And one of them had started disappearing. 2 weeks passed. Still no sign of John Ciancaglini, no calls, no messages. He wasn't showing up to the usual places. He wasn't returning anyone's reach. "Maybe he skipped town," Mikey said. "No," Joey said. "John ain't scared of prison." "Then maybe he flipped." Joey didn't respond. He just stared out the window, watching a trash truck roll by. Because if John flipped, then it meant the foundation was cracked. Not a street guy, not a hanger-on. A captain, a guy who sat at the table, a man Joey had once hugged like blood. It would mean the endgame had started. So he sent Georgie to dig deeper. Georgie hit every contact he had, bars, clubs, the docks, even old girlfriends. And what he found made his blood run cold. John had been seen entering a federal building 2 nights ago. Not cuffed, not escorted, just walking in like he belonged there. And he hadn't come out, not through the front door. Anyway, that's when Joey knew. They had him, and if they had John, then they had the tapes, the timelines, the deals. Joey didn't panic, but something inside him shifted. That night, he sat alone on the roof of a row home, drinking whiskey straight from the bottle, watching the skyline flicker. He thought about the old days, running with his father, getting arrested in Atlantic City, laughing with Georgie about jail food, driving down Broad Street with the top down, music loud, feeling like he owned the city. Now, he owned shadows. He lit a cigarette with shaky hands, first time that had happened in years. Maybe I got too loud, he said to himself. Maybe the streets were meant to stay quiet. The next morning, he made a call to his lawyer. Didn't say much, just told him to be ready. Because the thing about storms, you can smell them long before the thunder starts. And for Joey, the sky was getting black. Before the Fed cars, before the headlines, before the betrayals and disappearing faces, there was Chucky, Joey's old man. Salvatore, Chucky Merlino wasn't a saint, not by a long shot. But in the old days, when South Philly still ran on silence and fear, Chucky was someone you didn't cross. Made guy under Scarfo, sharp suits, dead eyes, fast hands. A man who laughed with killers and prayed in church like it meant something. Joey grew up in the long shadow of his father's name. As a boy, he didn't just hear stories, he saw them. Chucky didn't hide the life. He let it bleed into the living room, into the kitchen, into Joey's head. And Joey, he soaked it up. He watched the way Chucky walked into rooms, owned them without saying a word. He watched how money changed hands, how favors were called in, how silence was kept. But the biggest lesson Joey learned? This life don't come with a retirement plan. Chucky eventually fell. They all do. He got pinched, turned into a ghost in a jumpsuit, serving time while the streets shifted without him. Joey was still young then, just finding his voice. But instead of breaking him, it built something colder inside. Something that said, if they're gonna come for me too, they'll have to earn it. And now, sitting in a back room above a shuttered deli, Joey thought about his father's last words before going away. Don't trust loyalty, trust the silence that comes with fear. Those words rang louder now than ever. Because the silence in Joey's circle wasn't trust anymore. It was fear, heavy, suffocating. The kind of fear that made men hesitate, the kind that made them flip. Since John Ciancaglini had vanished into the Fed building, Joey's world had started folding in on itself. The streets were no longer buzzing, they were waiting for an indictment, a name drop, a phone call at 4 a.m. from someone saying, "They got him." Joey could feel the noose tightening, so he stopped talking. Meetings were down to 2 people max, no more restaurants, no more drives. Conversations happened in storage units, basements, or out in the open where noise could kill a wire. And even then, he trusted no one. One night, Giorgi Borghese brought up something from the past. "You remember when we were kids?" he said. "Stealing cigarettes out of Carlo's corner store?" Joey smirked. "He'd chase us with that broom like it was a shotgun." "Yeah, well, we laughed back then. Didn't care about feds, rats, heat. It was simple." Joey leaned back, stared at the flickering light above. "It was stupid," he said. "We thought we were untouchable. Kids of wise guys." "Maybe we were." Joey looked at him. "No, Georgie. We just hadn't bled yet." That silence settled heavy between them, because they both knew the truth. The bleeding had begun, and there was more coming. The next blow wasn't a subpoena, it was a raid. Not on Joey himself. They were too careful for that. But on one of his biggest earners, a guy named Tony Ferraro, who ran a trucking company out near the airport. A clean front, long-standing, moved product through South Jersey like clockwork. Feds stormed it at dawn, took computers, contracts, cash, brought in Ferraro's secretary and one of the warehouse guys, and then they leaked it to the press. Within hours, the Inquirer had a front-page story titled, "Federal Investigation Targets Philly Mob's Business Empire, Photos." Quotes from unnamed sources. All of it crafted like a blade aimed right at Joey's heart. Joey read the article in silence. Didn't flinch, didn't curse, just turned the page and said, They're not just building a case, they're building a show. Because that's how it worked now. The feds didn't just want convictions, they wanted theater. They wanted to bring back the old Hollywood image of the mob, suits, whispers, big names and cuffs. And Joey? He was the perfect poster boy. Skinny Joey, the throwback Don with a Rolex and a smile. They were trying to paint him as a modern-day Gotti, and Joey knew what happened to Gotti. He called Mikey Chang later that night. "Where's Ferraro now?" "Lawyered up, says he's solid." "Solid don't mean shit unless he keeps his mouth shut." "You want me to put a guy on him?" Joey paused. "No," he said. "Not yet. Let's see if he cracks." He hung up the phone and went to the bathroom mirror. Stared at himself. The lines on his face were deeper now, hair slicked back but thinner at the temples, eyes darker, years of stress, jail, betrayal. It had aged him, but not weakened him. If anything, the storm had made him sharper, harder. But something still haunted him, not the feds, not the possibility of prison, but the idea that maybe the life had changed and he didn't see it coming, that maybe he was fighting a war that no longer followed the old rules. That same night, Joey sat alone in the back office of an old bar that hadn't served a drink in years, a notebook in front of him. He opened it to a clean page and began to write names, just first names, no details, no numbers, just people. People who knew too much, people who used to be loyal, people who could bury him with a single taped conversation. He didn't rank them, didn't cross anyone out, just listed, one by one. And when he was done, he sat back and looked at the list. 13 names, each one a possible sword at his throat. He closed the book, lit a cigarette, and whispered, "They want me. They better come hard." Because he wasn't going to run, wasn't going to disappear to Cuba or Vegas or some rat's paradise. If they were coming for him, it'd be with blood in the streets and ashes in their mouths. And yet, behind the fire, behind the pride, there was something deeper brewing in him. A doubt, a question he never thought he'd ask. What if this is the end of the life and for real this time? Not because of fear, not because of prison, but because maybe the rules had died and he hadn't buried them. You could hear it in the way the doors opened, not slammed, not forced, just gently, cautiously, like everyone in the life was waiting for the ceiling to come down and they didn't want to be under it when it did. Joey had always been the one to walk into a room like he owned it. Now, he was still walking the same way. But the rooms were different, quieter, colder, even among his own men. The crew wasn't splintering, not yet, but the cracks were showing. Joey felt it every time someone avoided eye contact, shifted in their seat, showed up 10 minutes late and blamed traffic that didn't exist. The kind of movements that said, "I'm still here, but I don't know for how long." He used to have guys lining up to work under him, young bloods, earners, hotshots who wanted to be made. Now, they were scarce. And the ones still around had their ears open, but their mouths closed. And that silence, it wasn't loyalty anymore. It was fear. Joey sat with Georgie one night in a butcher's shop that had been shut down since the Scarfo era. It still smelled like metal and cold grease. The walk-in freezer didn't freeze anymore, but it made a damn good soundproof room. The kind of place guys only got called into when something serious was about to get discussed or done. Georgie leaned back on a wooden crate, chewing a toothpick like it was the only thing keeping him from losing his temper. "You want to know what I heard today?" he said, voice low. Joey lit a smoke. Didn't answer. "Old man Campisi, out in South Jersey. He's holding meetings again." Joey didn't blink. "He's finished. He's been finished." "Yeah, well, apparently no one told his ego. He's got 3 captains sitting with him. And guess who showed up last week?" Joey looked up. "Who?" "Benny Rizzo from our side." That hit like a slap. Benny wasn't just some soldier. He'd been part of the original crew when Joey started putting Philly back on the map. The kind of guy who used to say, "I'd die before I turn my back." Now he was sitting with Campisi, a relic of the Scarfo years, a guy who'd been quiet for a decade, but never really gave up the dream of taking back the throne. Joey leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What's he saying?" Georgie shrugged. "Not much. Just letting it be known that when you fall, He's willing to guide the family back to the old ways. Joey laughed, but it wasn't from the gut. It was bitter. You believe that? I gave those guys life again, put food back on their tables, got the name feared again, not just remembered like some ghost story. And now they want to treat me like a liability? Georgie didn't say anything. He didn't have to, because it was true. The problem with power is everyone wants it when it looks easy. But when the walls start closing in, the rats come out, not just to flee, but to claim what's left. The next few days were full of moves in the dark. Campisi was meeting with people behind closed doors, old union guys, former earners, even some West Philly crews who'd never aligned with Joey's vision of a flashier, faster mob. They liked the old days, the quiet days, the days when you could walk through South Philly and not worry about reporters or federal agents with parabolic mics. And they blamed Joey for that heat. Never mind the fact that the envelopes had gotten fatter since he came in. Never mind the fact that the name Merlino still made outsiders flinch. To the old lions, Joey had brought too much fire. And now, the jungle was burning. That week, Joey made his own move. He called for a sit-down. Neutral ground. A back room in an Italian social club that hadn't seen action since Clinton was in office. 3 captains from the old guard, 3 from Joey's side. And 1 trusted third party from New York, someone whose job was to make sure no one left in a body bag. When Joey walked in, it was with Georgie, Mazzone, and Mikey. He didn't wear a suit. He wore a leather jacket, collar up, like the streets themselves had walked in behind him. On the other side of the table, Campisi, old, wrinkled, but eyes still sharp. He wore a gray wool coat and a smug smile. He didn't speak first. Joey did. "You're making moves behind my back," he said flatly. "That's disrespect. You got something to say. Say it to my face." Campisi shrugged. "I've got concerns. You had concerns 10 years ago when the streets were dry. I fixed that." "Yeah," Campisi said, "and now the feds are knocking on every door from here to Trenton. Your name is poison out there." Joey smiled. "That's funny. My name was just good enough last year when you needed your nephew out of a jam, wasn't it?" Campisi's face tightened. Joey leaned forward. "Let me be clear. If you think you can sit there and plot my replacement, do it, but do it like a man. Say it now." Campisi met his eyes. "I think you've lost control." Silence. Even the guy from New York shifted in his seat. Georgie tensed like a coiled spring. But Joey? He smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just a little curl of the lip. "I haven't even started, old man." He stood up. "Keep playing chess in the dark, but understand this. I don't bluff, and I don't forgive." He walked out, didn't look back. After that meeting, the divide was official. Campisi and his crew weren't just doubters now. They were opposition. And while Joey wasn't going to start a war, not yet, he was ready for one. Lines were drawn, calls were made, and just like that, the old school versus new school fracture that had always lived in whispers finally had a heartbeat. But that wasn't even the worst part of the week. Because 3 days after the sit-down, Joey got word from a lawyer friend down at the courthouse. A sealed indictment had been filed, no names, just initials. But the initials matched people in Joey's crew. 2 of them. One was a minor associate, a kid who ran numbers and maybe got sloppy. No big loss. The other? Mazzone. Joey didn't believe it at first. Steve had been with him from the beginning. Smooth, clean, old-fashioned. If there was anyone who knew how to keep his hands clean, it was Steve. But sealed indictments didn't lie. Either someone had flipped, or the feds had tapes, serious ones. Joey called Steve to meet him at an auto shop in South Philly. Steve showed up on time, alone, no phone, just like protocol. Joey didn't yell, didn't accuse, just looked him in the eye and asked, "You good?" Steve nodded. "I'm good." "You sure? Because if you're holding out on me, I can't fix it." "I'd tell you if I was in trouble," Steve said. Joey believed him. He wanted to believe him. But as Steve turned to leave, Joey noticed something. A bead of sweat in the cold. That wasn't from the weather. That was fear. That night, Joey wrote another name in the notebook. Not crossed out, not condemned, just added. Because in this life, even your closest brother can be the one to slide the knife in. There are two kinds of silence in this life. One is the kind that protects you, the code, the vow, the quiet loyalty that keeps the streets in order. The other, the second kind, is dangerous. It's the kind of silence that comes when someone disappears and no one has answers. Not your guys, not your enemies, not even the cops. And that's exactly what Joey was dealing with. Mikey Chang was gone. No call, no warning, no message. He was just gone. The kind of gone that makes your stomach turn because you don't know if it was them or you. It started like any other day. Joey was at his usual spot, the back table in the old bakery on 9th Street, blinds drawn, espresso half full, cigarette burning down untouched. Georgie walked in, looking pale. "Something's wrong," he said. Joey didn't even look up. "Someone flip?" "Worse." Joey glanced at him. "What's worse than a rat?" Mikey didn't show for his envelope drop. That froze Joey mid-drag. Mikey was never late, never missed a drop. He was wild, sure, but when it came to business, the kid was clockwork. Joey stood slowly. "You checked the house?" "Empty. Car's still there." "Gun's gone." Joey crushed the cigarette into the saucer. "Get Mazone." By noon, every guy still loyal was making calls, knocking on doors, checking docks, diners, strip clubs, and shore houses. Joey even had someone check Mikey's mother's place in Jersey. The old woman hadn't seen him in 3 days. 3. It's too long in this life. 3 days without a call could mean anything. A Fed grab, a body in a trunk. Or worse, a voluntary exit. Joey didn't want to believe the last one. Because Mikey, he was like family. He'd done time for the crew. Took a beating once in lockup to keep Joey's name out of a story. They'd been together since the Scarfo cleanup days, when Philly was chaos and the only thing holding it together was a few kids with guts and ambition. But family ain't always blood. And loyalty has an expiration date, especially when the cops are promising you the world and your friends are too proud to beg you to stay. Joey met Mazone in a parking garage on Oregon Avenue. No words for the first 10 minutes, just silence, standing under flickering yellow lights, the sound of dripping water echoing like a broken metronome. Then, finally, Joey spoke. "If Mikey flipped, we're already done. He knows too much." Mazone looked tired. "Or maybe he's dead." Joey nodded, which means Campisi made his move. Either way, it was bad. If Mikey had been taken out, it was a direct message from the old guard. "You're next." If Mikey had flipped, it was worse, because the feds weren't just building a case now, they had a blueprint. 2 nights later, Joey got a call from one of the guys they still had watching Campisi's movements. He was breathless. "You're not going to like this." Joey was already bracing. "There's a new guy sitting with Campisi, real quiet, real respectful." "Who?" "Paulie V. That one hit hard." Paulie Versetti, another original from the early Merlino crew. Older, quiet, ran a strip club in Port Richmond, known for keeping his mouth shut and his pockets open. If Paulie was sitting with Campisi, that meant more than betrayal. It meant Campisi was building his own inner circle, replacing Joey piece by piece, man by man, with ghosts from his own past. Joey stared at the phone for a long time after hanging up. Everything inside him screamed to retaliate, to strike fast, send a message, kick in a door, and show the city that the real Don still had teeth. But he didn't. Not yet. Because you don't start wars until you know who's really firing the first bullet. And if Campisi was the one pulling strings, Joey still needed proof. That night, Joey sat alone with the notebook again. Same table, same bottle of scotch. He flipped to the list of names. Mikey's was still there, uncrossed, unlabeled, just sitting there. He stared at it for 20 minutes. Then, for the first time since he started the list, he drew a single line through it. Not a strike through, not an X, just one slow, steady line, like he was burying a body without a grave. The next morning, Joey made a move of his own. He called New York. Specifically, a captain in the Genovese family named Vincent Vinny Steele Marchese, an old contact from his days on parole who owed him a favor from back when the Gambinos tried to ice him in Queens. Vinny didn't like talking on the phone. So they met in person, a private room at a Greek social club in Astoria. Neutral ground. Joey walked in alone. Vinny smiled with half a mouth. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "Didn't think I'd have to come back," Joey replied. They sat. No wine, no cigars. Just two men with history and something to protect. Vinny leaned in. "You want me to take him out?" Joey raised an eyebrow. "Who said I want that?" Vinny smirked. "You're not here to reminisce, Merlino. So say it." Joey stared at the table. "I want to know if Campisi has backing in the 5 boroughs. I want to know who's letting him think he's allowed to build something again." Vinny leaned back. "So far, nobody. But that could change." Joey nodded. "Not if I stop it now." Vinny tapped a knuckle on the table. "Just don't make it sloppy. New York's watching Philly again. One wrong move and they'll burn the whole chessboard." Joey stood up. "Then I'll make it clean." He returned to Philly with new clarity. Campisi wasn't acting alone. He had silent hands pushing him forward, but not enough to protect him once the bullets started flying. Joey needed to move, but not with guns. Not yet. He needed to show the city that he still had the loyalty, that his side was still thicker, sharper, more dangerous. He needed to bring the ghosts back to his table. Guys like Paulie 5 had drifted because they thought the tide was turning. Joey was about to make the tide crash back the other way. He started making calls, not to current soldiers, but to old ones, guys who'd been frozen out, guys who'd been quiet for years. Joey promised them 2 things. 1, money. 2, and a chance to watch Campisi fall. Some were skeptical, but most, they were just waiting to be invited back in. Because this life doesn't die easy, and the men who leave it don't ever stop watching it. They just wait for a reason to believe in it again. By the end of the week, Joey had 9 new soldiers back in his fold. Men who knew the streets, knew the code, and most importantly, hated Campisi's guts. And when word got back to Campisi that Joey was rebuilding, he sent a message of his own, a box, left at the back door of one of Joey's strip clubs. Inside, a .38 revolver and a note. "Don't wait too long." Joey stared at it for a long time, then folded the note, placed it in his jacket pocket and whispered to himself, "I'm not waiting. I'm hunting." Because now it was official. The next man to disappear wouldn't be missing. He'd be gone on purpose. There's a line in the street code that says, "Once someone draws first blood, it's open season." And Campisi had drawn it. That .38 in the box, that wasn't a message, that was a challenge, a dare. A shot across the bow that said, "You blink first or we move." But Joey Merlino wasn't built to blink. He grew up in fire, lived through indictments, lockdowns, betrayals. He survived Scarfo's chaos, prison cells, and more federal eyes than a cartel boss. He wasn't just going to respond. He was going to send a message back. With blood. The target was Nicky Trapani, a low-ranking Campisi guy with a big mouth and a dumb face. He ran a numbers racket in South Philly, and worse, he bragged about it like he owned the city. But he made one mistake. He started talking loud in the wrong places. Word got back to Joey that Nicky had been running his mouth at a dive bar out in Mayfair. Something about Joey being past his prime, too loud, surrounded by ghosts. That was all Joey needed to hear. He didn't want to make a big move yet. Not Campisi himself, not a captain. That would bring heat. But a soldier could vanish, and nobody would light a candle. They picked a cold night. Georgie, Vinny D, one of the old dogs Joey brought back, and a driver named Ant. They waited outside Nicky's favorite after-hours spot, a seedy joint next to an auto garage. Nicky always left through the back door, always by himself, always drunk. That night was no different. He stumbled out around 3:12 a.m., lit a smoke, and was halfway to his car before he even realized anyone was behind him. 2 quick steps. Pop, pop, one to the chest, one to the neck, clean, quiet, No drama. They dumped the piece in the river and disappeared into the night like nothing ever happened. The body was found the next morning, slumped over the hood of his car like he fell asleep on it. No witnesses, no cameras, no prints, just a name in the paper. Alleged mob associate gunned down in South Philly. Joey read it at his kitchen table, sipping coffee. No smirk, no fist pump. Just silence. Because this wasn't a win, it was a necessity. The opening play in a war that was now out in the open. That same afternoon, Joey got a call from a name he hadn't heard in years. Ralphie Bacella. Old friend, almost family. Grew up in the same corner of the city, ran side jobs for Chucky back in the 80s, went quiet during the Scarfo implosion, moved to Florida, disappeared into palm trees and golf shirts. Joey picked up, half expecting the man to be selling condos, but the voice on the other end was calm, cold. I got information. Joey didn't ask how he got the number. Talk. You got a leak in your new circle, one of the old dogs you just brought back. Joey tensed. Who? I ain't saying it over the phone. Meet me at my place in Atlantic City. It's safe. No heat. We'll talk face to face. Joey paused. He didn't like it, but Ralphie had never burned him. Not once. Tonight? Tonight. The drive to Atlantic City was quiet. Just Joey, behind the wheel of a rented black SUV, no plates from Philly, no traceable anything. No Georgie, no Mazzone. He needed this one alone. Not because he didn't trust them, but because he didn't trust anyone else with what might come out of Ralphie's mouth. He arrived at a beachside condo just before midnight. Ralphie opened the door with a tired face and a glass of bourbon. Joey stepped in, looked around. Clean. Simple. Safe. You still drink that garbage? Joey said, eyeing the bourbon. Ralphie grinned. Helps with the guilt. They sat. 2 chairs, 1 low-burning lamp. Ralphie wasted no time. It's Paulie. Joey stared. Paulie V. He's with Campisi. No, it ain't just that. He's with the feds. Joey didn't blink. You sure? I'm sure. They got him 2 years ago on tax evasion. Had him locked. He flipped, cut a deal. They sent him back out 6 months ago to get close to Campisi. And you, Joey's voice dropped. Why you telling me this now? Because I know what comes next, and I ain't gonna watch 2 of my oldest friends kill each other over a game that's already rigged. Joey stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the empty beach. He'd suspected Paulie of betrayal. But not this. Not wires. Not wearing a wiretap inside Joey's own circle. That wasn't just betrayal. That was execution material. When he drove back into Philly the next morning, he didn't sleep. He called Georgie. Tighten up the crew. No calls, no sit-downs. If Paulie asks where I am, you don't know. You got something? I will soon. 2 days later, the confirmation came. From an inside source, a guy working courthouse records in exchange for monthly envelopes and an unspoken promise of protection. Paulie had met with federal prosecutors 5 times in the last 9 months. They had him listed as CW SWR 4 in an active RICO investigation. CW, confidential witness, and Joey had been breaking bread with him for weeks. He didn't explode, didn't throw a chair or smash a glass. He just walked into his kitchen, poured himself a drink, and looked at the calendar. Campisi had his moves, the feds had theirs. Now it was Joey's turn. He met Georgie at the garage at midnight. I want Paulie gone, Joey said. No talk, no message, no last chance. Georgie didn't flinch. Where? Joey lit a cigarette. You won't find him. He's gone underground. Probably hiding behind a dozen suits and 100 microphones. Georgie leaned in. Then what? Joey took a long drag. We bait him. You don't hunt a man like Paulie Versetti with muscle. You don't follow him. You don't call him. You don't make noise. You bleed silence. Let the bait hang out like rotting meat and wait for the rat to come sniffing. Joey knew this. He didn't learn it from books or prison yard chess matches. He learned it from the men who came before him. Men like his father, Chucky, men like Scarfo. Men who didn't survive long, but while they lived, they knew how to play this game with surgical cruelty. And now, Paulie was the game. The confirmation that Paulie was CW04 had hit Joey like a nail through the hand, not because Paulie was high profile, he wasn't, but because he was inside eating at Joey's table, smiling with old friends, watching, recording, waiting. It wasn't just betrayal. It was sickness, like cancer growing in the middle of your chest, laughing as it spreads. So Joey didn't rage, didn't scream. He built a plan. The setup started with a rumor. It was always the best way. Joey let word slip that a new crew was forming in South Philly, a younger one. No connections to the old names, independent, flashy, reckless. Led by a man named Carlo Mastro, a ghost no one had seen in 10 years. The rumor went like this. Carlo had cash, drugs, and federal immunity, thanks to a crooked AUSA down in Trenton. And now, he wanted a piece of the old city. It was fake, all of it. But it had two things Paulie couldn't resist. One, the smell of federal protection. And a man too bold for his own good Paulie would want in, because rats are greedy. And when they think they've got the feds behind them, they forget who's waiting in the shadows. Joey staged the first meeting in an abandoned candy warehouse near Oregon Avenue. Used to be a place where trucks delivered jelly beans by the ton back in the 80s. Now, rotting concrete, broken glass, and silence. He sent Georgie and a couple old faces, not soldiers, just guys Paulie would recognize from the past. Guys with stories, fake info, and just enough temptation. The message was clear. Carlo's back. He's got weight, he's got pull, and he wants allies. Paulie showed interest within 48 hours. He asked about the product, he asked about money, he asked if Carlo was the real deal, safe to work with. Joey smiled when Georgie told him that. Safe, Joey said, like the word tasted sour. He's asking about safety? The second meeting was set up at an old construction site on the edge of South Philly. Concrete skeletons, empty trailers, a perfect place for lies and bullets. Paulie showed, alone, that surprised Joey. He'd expected a wire, a backup tail, maybe even a pair of feds waiting from a safe distance. But Paulie pulled up in a rusted-out sedan, same crooked walk, same smug expression, like he thought he had the whole city by the throat. Georgie and Vinny D met him first. "Where's Carlo?" Paulie asked. "Busy," Vinny said, "but he wants to deal." Paulie sniffed the air like a dog at the edge of a landfill. "He got supply? More than we can move. You sure he's protected?" Georgie gave him a long look. "Why? You worried?" Paulie smiled. "No, just don't want to waste my time." Georgie passed him a burner phone. "Carlo call you in 2 days." Paulie pocketed it, didn't ask questions, didn't say goodbye, just turned and walked back to his car. Later that night, Joey sat with Georgie in the upstairs of an old corner bar. It smelled like wet wood and mildew, a bar no one drank in anymore. It hadn't served beer since 2009, but Joey kept the keys because history mattered, and sometimes history was all you had. "He bought it," Georgie said. "Of course he did," Joey replied. "He thinks he's untouchable." Georgie lit a smoke. "So when's the hit?" Joey didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at a framed photo on the wall. Old black and white, the neighborhood's first feast day parade. His father was in it, wearing a suit and fedora, flanked by men who were now long dead or long forgotten. "I don't want it quick," Joey said finally. "I want him to feel it." Over the next 3 days, the trap tightened. The fake crew fed Paulie more lies. That Carlo was building a new distribution line through the Navy Yard. That he had someone in the mayor's office. That he wanted Paulie to handle the South Philly operation, for old time's sake. Paulie didn't hesitate. He asked for a sit-down with Carlo. Joey smiled when he heard that. The date was set. Saturday night, midnight. Private warehouse, no watchers, just a friendly handshake between allies. But there'd be no handshake. No Carlo. Just Joey. And a gun. The night of the sit-down rain fell in sheets across the city. Hard, like it was trying to wash away the sins too deep for scrubbing. Joey sat alone in the dark warehouse, tucked behind a stack of rusted scaffolding. Dressed in black, silent, cold. His .380 rested in his coat, 2 extra clips in his pocket, not for show. This wasn't a message. This was personal. Paulie arrived at 12:06, 6 minutes late. The kind of disrespect that had gotten men shot in better days. He walked in slow, umbrella in hand, no weapon visible. Joey stepped out of the shadows before he could say a word. Paulie froze, didn't flinch, didn't pull. He just smirked. "Well," he said, "looks like I found Carlo." "No," Joey said. "You found your grave." For a long moment, neither man moved, just the sound of the rain outside. And then Joey said what he'd been holding back for months. "You sat at my table, ate my food, called me brother, and the whole time you were wearing a wire?" Paulie shrugged. "Gotta survive." Joey's jaw tightened. "You could have walked. I'd have let you. You could have faded out and I'd never have looked back. But you stayed. You smiled in my face." "I had to. They had me. I wasn't gonna rot in a cage like your old man." That landed like a slap. Joey took a step forward. "Don't talk about my father." Paulie's face twisted. "He died in prison. Alone. For what? A name? A code? Screw that. I got kids. I got..." Pop. The first shot hit him in the stomach. He fell forward, hands grabbing at air, knees cracking on the concrete. Joey stepped forward. "You had loyalty once, but now you're just meat." Paulie looked up, blood in his teeth. "They'll come for you," he gasped. Joey raised the gun. "Then let him come." Pop. When Joey walked out of the warehouse, he didn't look back. He didn't care about the rain soaking through his coat. Didn't care about the body cooling behind him. Paulie was gone. The rat was dead. But the war had just gotten louder. It took the feds less than 24 hours to realize Paulie 5 wasn't just missing. He was gone. No phone calls, no pings, no contact. His house untouched, car still parked outside, cell dead. And worse, he'd missed his weekly sit-down with the FBI handler, the one he'd never skipped in over 6 months of wearing a wire. That was all they needed to escalate. They didn't knock anymore. They kicked doors in. Joey got the news from a kid named Danny, a low-level lookout who worked at a pizza shop on Pashunk. Breathless, red-faced, shaking like a leaf. They hit Mazzone's sister's house, broke the windows, didn't even wait for a warrant. Joey barely reacted. He was sitting in the back of a barbershop, smoke curling above him, staring at his reflection in the mirror like he didn't recognize himself. "They find anything?" he asked. "No idea, but there's agents crawling all over South Philly now. It's not quiet anymore." That last part stuck in Joey's ribs. It's not quiet anymore. The streets didn't whisper now. They screamed. The bars, the butcher shops, the social clubs. Even the old men on their front stoops weren't talking. They just stared, down the block, across the street, into nothing, like they were waiting for something big to fall. Joey left the barbershop and went to the only place that still felt like it belonged to him. His mother's row house, the same one he grew up in, the same one that smelled like garlic, holy water, and cigarette ash. She was in the kitchen when he came in, old robe, hair tied back, slippers dragging on the tile. She didn't look surprised. "Something's happened," she said. Joey nodded. "You killed someone again, didn't you?" He didn't lie. "Yeah." She kept stirring the sauce, didn't even flinch. "Was it someone close?" He paused. "Used to be." She stopped stirring, turned around. For a second, Joey saw it, the deep carved sadness in her eyes, the kind of look only old Italian women have, like they've already buried too many people in their lives, and each new one still hurts the same. "Then they'll come for you now," she said softly. "Not just the law. Everyone." Joey didn't answer. He didn't have to, because the truth was already showing up on his doorstep. 2 nights later it happened. Something Joey could never prepare for, something he thought even this life wouldn't touch. His mother's house was vandalized, spray paint across the brick, bright red. One word: rat. Joey stood there staring at it under the streetlight, fists clenched, heart thudding in his chest like a war drum. Someone had crossed a line. His mother's house. She had nothing to do with the life. Everyone knew that. She didn't speak about business, didn't ask questions, didn't protect him, didn't sell him out. She just existed, a widow of a gangster, a mother to another, untouchable. Or so he thought. Joey called Georgie. "I want names. I don't care who you have to shake." "I already got a lead," Georgie said. "Word is it wasn't Campisi. It was Independence." "Who?" "Two Dominican kids from West Philly. Ran with Mikey for a while." "Heard you put him down. They're looking for revenge." Joey's voice turned to gravel. "They want revenge? They just signed their death warrant." But before he could even make the call to greenlight the hit, the real blow came. Joey was at his condo, finally getting some sleep, half-dressed, phone on the nightstand, pistol under his pillow, when the knock came. Not on the door, on the window, 3 sharp taps. He woke with a start, hand on the grip of the .380, pulled the curtain back. It was Danny, the lookout kid from the pizza shop. Joey opened the door with the gun in hand. Danny stumbled in, crying, gasping, bleeding from the lip. "They got Georgie," he whispered. Joey froze, the gun lowered. "What?" "Federal raid, 10 cars, full SWAT. They took him, screaming." "Where?" "His sister's place." Joey's chest felt hollow, like his ribs were made of glass and someone just tapped them with a hammer. Georgie was more than a soldier. He was a brother. He'd been there from the beginning, from the alley fights to the poker rooms to the quiet, late-night dinners, when Joey wondered if this life was worth dying for. And now, he was in federal custody. Joey went dark. No phones, no meetings, no cars. He moved through alleyways and basements like a ghost, stayed at a shut-down funeral home 2 neighborhoods away, the one that used to bury wise guys back in the Scarfo days. He lit candles in the chapel, lit one for Georgie, lit another for his father, and a third, not for the dead, but for the traitors still breathing. Because he knew what came next. The feds wouldn't just take Georgie and sit on it. They'd start squeezing. They'd start offering deals, stacking time like bricks, threatening wives and kids and reputations. And maybe, just maybe, Georgie would crack. That night, Joey stared at the old altar, whispered more to himself than God. "If Georgie flips, I go down. If he stays solid, I might still make it. Either way, this war ends in blood." 3 days passed. No word. Then a package arrived, left on the stoop of the pizza shop where Danny worked, unmarked, no return address. Inside, a single cassette tape, an old-school, hand-labeled thing that looked like it came from the 90s. Danny brought it straight to Joey. They sat in the freezer of the pizza shop, lights off, a battered tape player on the table. Joey hit play. The voice on the tape? Georgie, talking to a federal agent, sounding tired. Worn down. But not flipped. Not yet. He was stalling. "I'm not saying nothing without a deal. I ain't gonna bury a man for free." Joey gripped the table so hard his knuckles turned white. He wasn't sure if he felt relieved or betrayed, because Georgie hadn't flipped, but he was thinking about it. And in this life, that's enough to call a man dangerous. Outside, the street was quiet. The rain had stopped, but Joey knew what time it was. The feds had made their move. Campisi was still alive. Paulie was gone, but the street didn't care. And Georgie, the one person Joey had left, might be the next to go soft. The walls were closing in. The city had stopped whispering. Now it was watching. And Joey, he was more dangerous than ever. The thing about the life is, you learn to live with ghosts. They follow you, not the ones buried in graveyards, the ones who vanished, the ones you never got closure on, the ones who might be dead, but might not. And for weeks now, Mikey Chang had been Joey's loudest ghost, not because he screamed, but because he didn't. No calls, no sightings, no body. That silence hurt more than a bullet, because Mikey wasn't just a button man. He was loyalty in human form. Or so Joey believed. But then the writing showed up on the wall, literally, when his mother's house got sprayed, and rumors started floating about Mikey flipping, running, maybe working with Campisi. Even Georgie couldn't say for sure what happened. And now, Georgie was gone too, in a fed cage, holding out, barely. Joey felt like a king walking through a graveyard, and he knew the only thing more dangerous than a rat was a ghost who hadn't chosen sides yet. The call came at 2:43 in the morning. Block number, disposable phone. A voice Joey hadn't heard in nearly a month. Rough, paranoid, tired. "It's me." Joey froze. His cigarette dropped between his fingers, still burning. "Mikey?" Silence then. "I can't talk long." "They're watching everything." Joey stepped outside into the alley behind the pizza joint. Rain fell in thick sheets. His breath hung in the cold. "Where the hell are you?" "Alive, that's all I can say." "You flip?" "No." "Then what is this?" Another silence. Then the words, "They were going to kill me, Joe. Not the feds. Campisi. I found out something, and now they're trying to clean house." Joey's grip on the phone tightened. "What did you find out?" Mikey's voice cracked. "I can't say on this line, but you were right. Campisi's not running this alone. He's being fed information." Joey's mind reeled. From where? Inside. Joey's heart dropped. He thought the leak was Polly. He thought the trail ended there, but Polly had been a pawn, maybe even a decoy. "Who?" Joey asked. Mikey didn't answer. Then, quietly, "You're not going to like it." The call cut. Joey stood there, soaked to the bone, blood rushing in his ears. Mikey was alive, hiding. And the war wasn't just about feds or turf or power. It was about a spy in Joey's inner circle, still breathing, still feeding Campisi, still watching. He went to the only place he could think in peace, his father's old grave. The cemetery was quiet. Dead leaves stuck to the marble headstones. Joey stood over the stone etched with Salvatore Joey Merlino, hands in his coat pockets, eyes red-rimmed from the cold and sleeplessness. "You always said the ones who smile the most are the first to run," Joey said quietly. "I should have listened better." He lit a cigarette, watched the smoke curl in the wind. "I buried one rat. Now there's another." He didn't cry. He didn't kneel. He just stood there, jaw tight, until the sun cracked the horizon. And in that moment, Joey made a decision. No more waiting, no more chess, no more patience. He was going to force the traitor into the light, and he was going to do it by putting Campisi on the defensive. Joey returned to the city and called a meeting. Not a sit-down, a summons. The kind of meeting you only call when you want to draw lines in blood. He brought in every loyal soldier left, a dozen men, maybe less. Some had been ghosts. Others were new faces who'd earned fast stripes in the chaos. They met in a former church on Reed Street. The stained glass was cracked. Pews pushed aside, the altar long removed. Now it was a war room. Joey stood at the front with Mazzone, his last captain still free. "This is it," Joey said. "Campisi wants a takeover? Let's give him a goddamn funeral." No one said a word, not because they feared him, but because they knew the truth. This wasn't about money anymore, or power. This was about survival, and survival in their world meant someone had to die. The target wasn't Campisi, not yet. That would bring too much heat. Joey wanted a message, someone close to Campisi, public, brutal, unmistakable. That message was a man named Rocco Di Benedetto, Campisi's top earner in the port unions. Rocco was smart, careful, always surrounded by muscle. But he had a habit, boxing, 3 times a week, a private gym in Fishtown, no guards, no eyes. Joey had him watched for 3 days, patterns confirmed, and then he sent 2 men, Tommy the Shield and Benny F. Old School. No phones, no fingerprints. They walked into the gym dressed like janitors. Rocco was mid-spar with his trainer when the bell rang and he stepped out of the ring. He never made it to the water bottle. 2 shots, 1 in the thigh to drop him, 1 in the neck to end him. They left the body in the ring, gloves still on, blood soaking the mat like spilled wine. Joey watched the report on a cracked TV in the back of a pawn shop. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. The message was sent. This isn't chess. This is war. Campisi responded within hours, not with a hit, but with something worse. The feds raided Joey's last clean front, a landscaping company in South Jersey. They took computers, bank records, employee logs. It wasn't random. It was targeted. Joey sat in the back of Mazzone's apartment that night, glass of scotch in hand, phone turned off. They knew where to look, he muttered. Mazzone nodded. Someone's still talking. Joey stared into the drink. Mikey said I wouldn't like who it was. Then the call came again. Blocked number. Joey answered with no hesitation. Mikey sounded exhausted. Can you talk? He asked. Talk? I was right. The leak's not Polly, not even Benny. It's... He stopped. Who? Joey growled. You're not going to believe it, but it's the one guy no one would ever suspect. Say it. A long pause. Then, Mazzone. Joey went still, like the air had turned to ice. What? He's the one feeding info to the feds, to Campisi. He cut a deal months ago. That indictment with his name on it, it was a fake. He was never in danger. It was all leverage. They used it to buy him. Joey's mind reeled. Mazzone? Steve Mazzone? The guy sitting 20 feet away? The last captain standing? The one who'd built the crew with him from scratch? Why would he... He thinks you're finished, Joey, Mikey said. He's already in talks to take over what's left once they bury you. He wants the crown. Only problem is, Joey finished the sentence in a whisper. I'm not dead yet. He ended the call. Walked back into the living room. Mazzone was on the couch, watching an old Eagles game replay. Everything good? He asked. Joey nodded slowly. Yeah, just got some clarity. Steve raised his drink. About time. Joey smiled. But inside, he was already planning how to kill his last brother. Loyalty is a fragile thing in this life. It looks like concrete, feels like steel. But it shatters like glass when money, fear, or power come knocking. And now, Joey sat across the room from Steve Mazzone, the man he once called a brother, knowing the truth. Mazzone was the rat, not just a guy hedging bets, not just whispering to cover himself. He was feeding Campisi, feeding the feds, playing both ends while Joey fought for survival. Mikey Chang's call confirmed it. Steve had been protected from the indictment months ago, made to look like a target when really, he'd been repositioned. The feds used the illusion of pressure to earn his cooperation. Campisi kept him close to keep Joey in check. Joey's last ally wasn't just gone, he was the enemy. But Joey didn't show his hand. Not yet. He smiled. He drank with Steve that night, talked about old times. I was thinking, Joey said, lighting a cigarette. Maybe it's time we take Campisi out directly. No more surgical hits, no more whispers. Just rip the head off. Steve leaned forward, interested. Joey studied him through the smoke. We know where he eats on Thursdays, that little club in Jersey, right? Steve nodded. Yeah, but it's tight. Got guys with him. Joey tapped his ash. Not if we catch him walking to his car. He watched Steve's eyes, how they moved, measured, processing, calculating if this was real or a trap. Let me set it up, Steve said after a pause. I'll get eyes on it. Make sure he's exposed. Joey smiled. You always had good instincts. But inside? He was already counting the seconds until Steve would call Campisi and warn him, and that's exactly what Joey wanted, because the hit wasn't going to be on Campisi. It was going to be on Steve. 2 days later, Joey laid the groundwork. He called in a ghost crew, 3 old earners from the Scarfo days who owed Joey Merlino favors. They were off the books, unseen, forgotten by most of the city. They didn't care about politics or power. All they needed was one thing. Who's got to go? Joey gave them the name. They didn't flinch. Where and when? One asked. Joey passed them a note. The plan was clean, simple, surgical, final. Mazzone was to meet with Joey's Connect, a fake arms supplier from Jersey, a new piece of muscle that would help them rearm for a possible retaliation wave. Steve agreed to handle it himself. I'll feel him out, he said. Make sure he ain't a cop. Joey just nodded. He made it look like trust. But what he was really offering was a grave in a parking garage. The day of the meeting, Joey sat alone in his car, parked 2 blocks away from the warehouse. Rain again, always rain lately. He watched the clock on the dashboard tick slowly, second by second. At 11:42 p.m., Steve's car pulled into the lot. right on time. He stepped out in a dark coat, glancing around, calm, confident, oblivious. Then the first shot cracked, a short pop, not loud, clean. Joey didn't flinch, he just kept watching. The second shot came 2 seconds later. Chest, head. Steve dropped like a cut string. The ghost crew did their job fast. No witnesses, no drag marks. They left the body in the front seat of his car, lights still on, radio still playing. It would be hours before someone found him. Joey drove off without a word. No smile, no fist pump, just silence. Because killing Steve wasn't a win. It was a death in the family, a necessary cut, but a wound all the same. They'd grown up together, done time, built empires. But the code was clear. You betray the brotherhood. You die like a stranger. By morning, the city knew. Word moved fast in Philly. Mazzone was dead, found with 2 slugs and a note left in his pocket that simply said, "Loyalty is earned." Even the feds heard it, loud and clear, no arrests, no headlines, but eyes sharpened. Agents got nervous because they'd counted on Steve. They thought he was the keystone. And now he was just another cold body with a history. Campisi's reaction came within 24 hours. A firebomb at one of Joey's clubs. No injuries, just destruction. Flames tore through the walls, devoured the office, blackened the walls like hell had reached up through the floor. Joey stood in front of the ruins hours later, watching smoke curl into the morning air. Georgie was still in custody. Mazzone was gone. Mikey was off-grid. He was down to 5 trusted men, maybe less. And the city? The city was tired of waiting. That same afternoon, Joey went to see someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Angelo Sparks Vento, retired captain, blind in one eye, lived above a hardware store like a monk who once ruled a street kingdom. He opened the door in a robe, cigarette hanging from his lip, white stubble covering his jaw. "Merlino," he said, not surprised. Joey stepped in without a word. They sat. Silence filled the air like old perfume. Then finally, Joey spoke. "I'm going to end this." Angelo nodded slowly. "It's already ended, kid. You just haven't buried it yet. I kill Campisi. The rest fold. You think so?" Joey looked at him. "I know so." Angelo chuckled, low and bitter. "You know what ends wars? Death? No. Surrender. Someone gives up first. Someone decides it ain't worth dying in a gutter for a name carved in concrete." Joey stood. "It's not going to be me." Angelo stubbed his cigarette out. "I know. That's why you're going to win. And that's why you'll be alone." Later that night, Joey sat in his car in the Italian market, the same streets he used to walk with his father, the same alleys where deals were made, shots were fired, history was written in blood and pride. The place felt hollow now, like the soul had been scooped out of the city and buried with all the names on Joey's list. He pulled out the notebook again. There were 3 names left. One was Campisi. The other 2, himself and Georgie. Because if Georgie flipped in custody, if he decided that the war wasn't worth dying for, Joey would have to kill him too. And if that happened, Joey would be the last one standing on a mountain of corpses, wearing a crown built on graves. There's a sound the city makes when it's about to bleed. It's not sirens, not gunshots. It's silence. Not peace, silence. Like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see who gets buried next. That's what Philly felt like the week after Mazzone's body dropped. The clubs were empty. The old men on the corner stopped telling stories. Even the feds slowed down their raids, not because they were done, but because they were watching, waiting for Joey to make his next move. And Joey? He was already planning it, because there was only one name left that mattered. Salvatore Campisi, the old Don, the shadow puppeteer, the snake who whispered in ears and thought Joey wouldn't bite back. Joey sat in a shut-down diner on South Street, a half-drunk coffee in front of him, watching steam rise like ghosts off hot concrete. 2 men sat across from him, the last 2 soldiers left that he still trusted. One was Benny F., quiet, steady, always ready to shoot. The other was Tony Chops, a thick-necked bruiser who ran numbers out of Delco. "This is it," Joey said. "We go in, we go hard. No warning, no phone call. I want Campisi dead before his dinner gets cold." Tony cracked his knuckles. "He's still eating at that joint in Jersey?" "Every Thursday, like clockwork. Same corner table, same 4 old bastards with him." "You want the whole table?" Joey shook his head. "Just him." The plan was sharp, surgical, final. Campisi's restaurant was a converted warehouse dressed up with white linens and overpriced Chianti. Joey knew the layout. 2 exits, back door always locked, 1 guard inside, 1 out. They'd hit the place at 8:35 p.m., not midnight, not late, early, while the bread was still warm and no one was expecting it. Joey wanted Campisi to see him before the shot, to know it was him, to see the face of the man who burned down his empire. That morning, Joey dressed like it was his last day on Earth. Black slacks, black coat, black gloves in the pocket, no rings, no watch, just steel in his hand and stone in his gut. He stood in the mirror and stared. His face looked older than he remembered, lines carved from years of betrayal, war, and survival. He looked nothing like the kid who once smiled on Broad Street like he owned it. He looked like a man who knew he might not make it to morning. And then, the call came, just as he was slipping the pistol into his waistband. Blocked number, again. He answered without a word, the voice on the other end. Georgie. Alive, out of custody, and shaking. "Joey." Joey went still. "You better tell me you didn't talk." "I didn't. I swear it on my life." "You're out?" "They released me, cut me loose." "They got nothing. I held. I swear to God." Joey's heart pounded, not from fear, from confusion. The feds don't just let guys go, especially not guys tied to multiple bodies in federal heat, unless... "You flipped," Joey whispered, voice low. "I didn't. They tried. They offered me everything. I told them to go fuckhand themselves." Joey sat down on the edge of the bed, hand gripping the phone like it was glass. "Why now, Georgie? Why call me now?" "Because I know something. Something about Campisi." "What?" Georgie's voice broke. "Campisi didn't start this." Joey's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "He didn't kill Mikey. He didn't flip Mazzone. He didn't burn your club. He's not pulling strings. He's being used." Joey stood. "You're lying." "I'm not. The feds want you and Campisi to wipe each other out. They fed both sides just enough to keep the fire going, and you both played right into it." Joey's mind reeled. "No," he said. "Campisi's got his own play. He's been reaching out to New York. He's..." "Yeah," Georgie cut in, "because he thinks you're being protected. You see? They fed him lies about you too. They made him paranoid. They pushed him into the corner so you'd come after him." Joey sank back down. The room spun. All this time, the war, the hits, the blood, Mazzone. What if the rat wasn't one of them? What if it was a suit in a federal office? Joey's voice dropped. Mazzone still flipped. Mikey saw the files. "I don't know about that," Georgie said. "Maybe, maybe not. But this war, it's not ours, Joe. It was built." A pause. Then Georgie said something that hit Joey like a punch in the gut. "If you kill Campisi, you give the feds exactly what they want." Joey hung up, stared at the wall. Sweat dripped down his back. He thought about the notebook, the list of names he'd crossed out one by one. He thought about the years of building, of trusting, of killing. He thought about his father, and then he made a choice. At 8:15 p.m., Benny and Tony waited outside the restaurant. Gloves on, guns loaded, eyes sharp. Joey was late. 8:20 came, then 8:30. Still no Joey. At 8:37, Joey finally called. "Abort," he said. Tony blinked. "What?" "I said abort. Stand down. Walk away." "Joey, he's here. Campisi's here." "I know." Silence. Tony sighed. "You sure?" Joey hung up. Across the river, Campisi sat at his table, sipping wine, breaking bread. He never knew how close he came to dying that night. He'd never know. Joey didn't need to tell him. Because the war was no longer about him. Joey walked to the edge of the Delaware River that night, lit a cigarette, and stared at the water. The city hummed behind him. He knew he wasn't out of the woods. He still had enemies. He still had blood on his hands. But for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel hollow. He'd pulled back. He'd done something no Merlino had done in decades. He'd chosen control over chaos. And that meant something. It meant he was still the Don, not just a street thug with a death wish. But in the dark, something else was coming. Someone was watching, not Campisi, not the streets, not the feds. Someone Joey never saw coming. The streets were quiet but not dead. That's how it always was after a near hit, when bullets were loaded but never fired, and names were spared for reasons no one could explain. No one knew Joey had pulled back from the edge of killing Campisi, not even Campisi himself. And that was the dangerous part. Because when a man thinks you're coming for him, and you don't, it makes him paranoid. And paranoia breeds desperation. Joey wasn't worried about retaliation, not yet. What he was worried about was the silence from the feds. He knew they were watching. He knew they were listening. And now, with Georgie back on the street and the war cooling, Joey expected one of two things: a federal indictment, or something worse, a deal. But what came next wasn't either of those. It was a visitor, a ghost. It happened late one night, just past 1 a.m. Joey was sitting in the back of a closed-down pool hall off Tasker Street, a bottle of scotch on the table, a gun beside it. That had become his new routine. No more clubs, no more bars, just whiskey and silence. The knock on the door was slow, 3 times, soft, not a cop knock, not a hit knock. Joey stood, gun in hand, and opened the door without a word. And there he was, Anthony Merlino, his cousin, his father's godson, his ghost. Joey hadn't seen Anthony in more than 15 years. Last anyone heard, he'd vanished after a gun charge in Vegas, disappeared into the West like some outlaw with secrets. No calls, no letters, no messages, just gone. Now here he was, thinner, older, but same eyes, cold, calculating. The kind of eyes that never blink in a room full of danger. Joey lowered the gun slowly. Didn't think you'd ever show your face in this city again. Anthony stepped inside like he owned the place. Didn't think I needed to. They sat across from each other, 2 shadows of the same family, but separated by time, by war, by silence. "What do you want?" Joey asked. Anthony poured himself a drink. "I came to give you something you don't have." "What's that?" "A way out." Joey laughed once, short, bitter. "There's no out." "There is," Anthony said. "But only if you stop playing like a street boss and start thinking like a ghost." Joey leaned back. "You've been hiding in the mountains too long." Anthony leaned forward. "The life you're holding on to, it's over. The rules are gone. Loyalty doesn't exist. The feds don't want order anymore. They want chaos. They don't want to arrest you. They want you to destroy yourself in front of a camera." Joey stared at him. "And what? You come back now to preach? To act like you're above it all?" Anthony shook his head. "I came back because the feds aren't watching Campisi. They're not watching Georgie. They're not watching the rats you already buried." He looked Joey dead in the eyes. "They're watching you." That hit harder than any punch Joey had taken in his life. Because it wasn't a warning. It was a sentence. Anthony continued. "They think you're the last remnant, the final Don, the one who could bring back the old ways, and they can't have that. So they're not trying to indict you. They're trying to erase you." Joey poured another drink. "You got proof?" Anthony reached into his coat and pulled out a small folder, tossed it on the table. Inside were photos, surveillance stills, from months ago. Joey in his car, Joey on the boardwalk, Joey at his mother's place. Not from the usual angles, close up, too close. "There's a ghost unit working you," Anthony said. "Off the books, joint task force, FBI and Philly PD. They're not building a case, they're building a story. One where you're either gunned down by Campisi or you kill him and die in prison." Joey stared at the photos. They're writing my ending, Anthony nodded. Unless you disappear before they finish the last chapter. Silence, only the sound of the city humming somewhere far away. Joey's jaw tightened. I'm not going into hiding. I'm not telling you to run. I'm telling you to walk out alive before there's no one left to carry your casket. Joey sipped his drink, and for a long moment, he didn't speak. The next morning, Joey drove to Broad Street just after sunrise. The city was waking up slow, delivery trucks rolling in, old men opening shops, early risers jogging like they didn't know the streets used to run red here. He parked in front of a corner bar that used to belong to Scarfo's old crew. Now it was nothing. Boarded up, broken window, a tag on the wall that said, "No Kings Here." He stared at the tag for a long time. Then he got out. Inside the bar was Campisi. Alone, no guards, no suit. Just a man drinking espresso like nothing had happened, like he wasn't the man Joey had once vowed to bury. He looked up as Joey entered, and for a second, the air went still. No guns drawn, no fists raised. Just two old lions in a ruined jungle staring at each other. Campisi finally spoke. "You should have killed me," Joey nodded. "Thought about it." Campisi chuckled. "Well, what now?" Joey sat. "Now we talk." What followed wasn't an apology, wasn't peace, just truth. Two men admitting that the war they'd been in, it wasn't theirs. They'd been used, pushed, fed just enough lies to destroy each other. The feds wanted one thing, collapse, not arrests, oblivion. Joey leaned forward. "I got a way out." Campisi raised an eyebrow. "For you?" "For both of us." Campisi laughed. "You don't believe in peace, Merlino." "No," Joey said, "but I believe in power, and I believe in revenge." He lit a cigarette. "I walk away. You retire. We let the city rot without us, and we let the suits write their story with no ending. And if I don't want to walk," Joey looked at him, "then I'll kill you tomorrow." They stared at each other for a long time. Campisi took a slow sip of his drink. "Your old man would have shot me already." Joey smirked. "My old man died in prison." He stood. "I'm not making the same mistake." As he walked out of the bar, Joey felt something strange. Not peace, not victory, but clarity. Like the fog had finally lifted. The war was done. And now he had one last thing to do. That night, he burned the notebook, the one with all the names. He did it in a trash can behind the pool hall. Page by page, each name turned to ash. Georgie, Mazzone, Paulie, Campisi. Himself, every grudge, every ghost, gone. When the fire died, he whispered, "You don't own me anymore." Then he disappeared. No phone calls, no goodbyes, no rumors, just gone. Some say he went to South America. Some say he took a deal and vanished into witness protection. Others say he was gunned down by a kid in Queens over a parking spot. But the truth? He walked away. Before the bullets, before the cuffs, before the crown turned to rust, Joey Merlino disappeared like smoke. And the city? It kept whispering his name. They said Joey was gone. No body, no funeral, no mugshot, just silence. He didn't run, didn't snitch, didn't die. He just vanished, like the smoke off a hot barrel, drifting into the air before anyone could breathe it in. And in Philly, that kind of silence doesn't last. Because power in a city like this is like vacuumed air. One king falls, 100 jackals rush to fill the throne. So when Joey disappeared, a new name started to rise, and it wasn't Campisi. The jackal in a suit. His name was Vincent Vinci Spatafor, early 40s, dressed like Wall Street, moved like South Street, quiet voice, fake smile, eyes like broken glass. He wasn't one of Joey's guys. Wasn't Campisi's either. He was nothing. Until Joey disappeared. Then, he was everything. Word spread fast that Vinci had outlasted the old regime, that he had ties to New York, the Irish up in Kensington, Albanians in the north. Most of it was lies, but in this life, lies told loud enough become facts. and Vincy Spatafor was shouting with money. Strip clubs reopened, loan operations started humming again, garbage contracts reappeared, even the meatpacking guys started kicking up. And just like that, a new Don sat in Philly. Only one problem. He wasn't respected, feared maybe, obeyed for now. But no one looked at Vincy the way they looked at Joey. Because Joey was blood. Joey came from a line of men who earned every scar. Vincy, he bought his way in. And worse, he was greedy. He started leaning on people who were once untouchable. Guys who stayed quiet during Joey's time suddenly found envelopes disappearing, trucks getting lost, daughters getting followed. Vincy was dangerous, not because he had killers, but because he thought he was smarter than the street. And in Philly, that gets you killed. But no one made a move, not at first, because fear still lingered. Joey's shadow was long. Some thought he'd come back. Others said he was watching. Some said he was already dead. And then, something happened that changed everything. A body was found. It surfaced in the Schuylkill River, wrapped in tarp, ropes knotted tight, mouth taped, hands bound. The face? Unrecognizable. But the jacket? That was familiar. The initials inside the collar read, S.M. Steve Mazzone. The final confirmation. Joey had killed him, for real. No staged vanishing, no witness protection. Mazzone was dead, face blown off, and floating like driftwood. The war stories were true. Joey had cleaned house before leaving. Now the streets believed again, and with belief came the hunger. Vincy Spatafor's name didn't mean fear anymore. It meant opportunity. Georgie returns. Then Georgie Borghese came back. Not loud, not with fireworks. Just a quiet reappearance at a neighborhood funeral, a cousin no one liked. He walked into the church like he hadn't been gone for months. Black suit, dark glasses, no emotion. People stared, some nodded, others whispered. He sat in the back, didn't speak. But his presence? It said everything. Joey may have vanished, but his blood was still on the streets. And Georgie, he had unfinished business. That same night, Georgie met with an old associate, a man named Nico Scardino, once a driver, now a small-time bookie out of West Passyunk. They sat in the back of a bakery. Nico spoke first. "You here to take the crown?" Georgie sipped espresso. "No crown left." "Then what?" Georgie leaned forward. "To make sure nobody else wears it." The letter 1 week later, Georgie received a letter, hand-delivered, no return address, folded once, sealed with black tape. Inside was a single sentence. "You think he's dead, but you didn't bury him." No name, no signature, just that. And something else. A photo. Blurry, zoomed in, but clear enough to show a man, beard grown, glasses on, head down, boarding a boat in Panama. Joey, alive. Georgie stared at the photo for a long time, then burned it. He didn't tell anyone. Not Vincy, not Nico, not even the priest at his mother's church. Because if Joey was alive, that changed everything. The secret from the grave. But the streets weren't done revealing secrets. A federal indictment dropped in late October, not against Vincy, not against any known soldier, but against a retired FBI agent named Robert Kellerman. The charges? Conspiracy, withholding evidence, witness manipulation, obstruction of justice. The case referenced CW04, the same confidential informant connected to the Merlino investigation. Turns out, Kellerman had manufactured evidence to pit Joey and Campisi against each other. It was all a game. Joey's war wasn't organic, it was engineered. Kellerman had been the real rat. And now, he was facing 25 years in federal court. The headlines exploded. Feds corrupted mob war in Philly, FBI agent accused of orchestrating false conflict between crime bosses. And just like that, Joey Merlino didn't look like a gangster anymore. He looked like a survivor. Legacy in ashes. But the streets don't care about courtrooms. They care about power. And power was still up for grabs. Georgie began quietly meeting with old lieutenants, guys who once swore loyalty to Joey, Guys who were sick of Vincey's greed, and one by one, they started coming back. Not to rebuild the old family, but to protect its ghost. Georgie wasn't looking to be king. He was building a fortress of silence, so that no one else could ever wear the name Merlino on their back again. By the end of the month, Vincey Spatafor got the message. He left Philly quietly. No funeral, no fight, just a plane to Vegas and a bag of money no one touched. His reign lasted 6 months. Joey's name still controlled the streets, even in absence, even in death or life, nobody knew. And that was the power of legend. You'd think a man like Joey Merlino would go out with sirens, gunshots, headlines screaming his name. But when Joey vanished, he left nothing. No funeral, no arrest, no legend carved into marble, just smoke trailing off the South Philly rooftops and into memory. But ghosts? They don't die when you bury the body. They die when people stop talking about them. And in Philly, nobody had stopped talking about Joey, not yet. Panama. The photo Georgie burned was real. Joey had been in Panama for nearly 4 months now, living in a modest villa near Colon, no bodyguards, no crew, just a rented Jeep, a fake name, and a drawer full of passports. He fished in the mornings, read old newspapers in the afternoons, and walked barefoot in the rain whenever the sky opened. He didn't smile often, didn't speak much. Most days he just sat, staring out at the water like it owed him answers. One night he received a package, no stamps, no return address. Just a black envelope and a Polaroid inside, a photo of his mother's gravestone. She'd passed in her sleep, 3 days before, no cancer, no pain, just gone, quiet. He stared at the photo until his hands started shaking, not from grief, but from guilt. She died thinking her son was either in prison or dead. She never got the truth, never got peace. And Joey? He realized then, this is what survival really is, living long enough to regret every face you had to leave behind. Philadelphia, now. Back in Philly, Georgie Borghese was holding the city together like string and duct tape. He wasn't boss, didn't want to be. But people came to him when money went missing, or debts weren't paid, or someone's nephew started asking too many questions. He ruled with a phone, not a gun. And that's why the city still breathed. But something gnawed at Georgie day and night, a question that wouldn't leave him alone. If Joey's alive, why hasn't he called me? That answer came in the form of an unexpected visit. Georgie was at an old chapel, empty, boarded up, but still sacred to the neighborhood, when Nico Scardino walked in, white-faced, shaking. "He's here," Nico whispered. Georgie blinked. "Who?" "Joey, the return." Joey came back in the dark, no entourage, no announcement. He walked into Georgie's hideout, the basement of a South Philly deli, wearing a hooded coat and shoes covered in airport dust. They didn't hug, they didn't speak at first. They just stared. Time had aged them both like milk, fast, sour, and hard to swallow. Georgie finally broke the silence. "You really gonna walk in like a ghost and say nothing?" Joey sat down, lit a cigarette. "I didn't know how to say sorry." Georgie laughed once, sharp, bitter. "Since when did you ever try?" Joey looked at him. "You held it down," Georgie nodded. "Because someone had to. Because I thought, maybe you were coming back." Joey exhaled smoke. "I was gone, G." "I know." Another silence. Then Joey said something unexpected. "I ain't staying." Georgie flinched. "What?" "I came to say goodbye." Georgie stood, pacing. "You don't get to come back and vanish again, Joey. Not this time. Not after all this." Joey looked up, calm. "I buried everyone I loved. I became the ghost I never wanted to be. You don't build a new house on top of a cemetery, G. You walk away." "You are this city," Georgie snapped. Joey shook his head. "No, I was. Now I'm the thing it's trying to forget." Georgie slammed his hand on the table. "Then tell me why you came back." Joey's eyes flicked up. "To make sure you don't follow me into the dark." "The offer." Joey didn't return to rebuild. He didn't want the crown. He didn't want blood. He came to offer Georgie a way out. I've got papers, IDs, a place down south, clean money, enough for 2 lifetimes. Georgie scoffed. You think I'm gonna hide in some jungle? Let Vincey's crew or whoever's next piss on our name? Joey leaned in. There's no name left. You're wrong, Joey smiled, for the first time in a long time. You're still a soldier, Georgie grinned, eyes hard. And you're still a Don. The fire. That night, someone threw a Molotov through the window of a deli that Georgie owned. It wasn't random. The city had learned Joey was back. Word travels fast when ghosts walk. And some people, they weren't happy. The fire didn't kill anyone, but it lit a fuse. Guys started choosing sides again. Whispers came back. Names were spoken behind closed doors. Joey's back. He's building again. It's about to start over. But Joey didn't flinch. He called Georgie that night. Let them believe whatever they want. The final move. The next morning, Joey walked to the heart of South Philly. Broad and Wolf, where it all began. He stood in the middle of the street, looking around. The butcher, the church, the candy store turned vape shop. It was all still there, but it wasn't his, not anymore. He pulled out a small envelope from his coat and slid it under the door of a shuttered bar. Inside, a list of every cop, every fed, every rat, every name he'd ever kept, handwritten, signed, sealed, his final confession. But not to the law, to the streets, to say, this is the game, and this is how it ends. Georgie's choice. Joey was gone the next morning, gone for real. No goodbyes, just silence. Georgie found a note on his windshield. You'll always be blood, but Philly needs peace now, not ghosts. Let it rest. Georgie held that note for a long time. He walked into a diner and sat alone, coffee black, eyes red. A man came in, young, twitchy, probably wired, tried to pitch Georgie on a deal, numbers, runners, muscle. Georgie smiled. Not interested. You sure? It's wide open. Joey's gone. Georgie looked him in the eyes. Let me tell you something, kid. Joey ain't gone. He just became the part of this city that never dies. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Philadelphia mob was quiet. No major hits, no federal takedowns, no wars, just shadows. The streets remembered Joey, not with murals, not with mass, but with silence. Every envelope passed hand to hand still had his name floating above it. Every deal made in a corner booth was compared to what he would have done, and in every quiet moment, someone always said, he's still out there. They were right. Somewhere, maybe Panama, maybe South America, maybe back under a different name in Philly, Joey Merlino was alive, not as a boss, not as a ghost, but as a man who outlasted the game, the rare one who walked out clean. And in this life, that's the biggest legend of all.